Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. What is the left? One of the things we hear most often attributed to the left is that they are educated. They have college degrees. Now, we need to stop drawing a parallel between those two things. Those two things are not linked. Having a college degree and being educated are not the same thing. And in fact, they do not overlap well on a Venn diagram. But let's add a couple more things. The left isn't just people with college degrees. The left, whether they know it or not, are Marxists or socialists of some flavor. And socialists are Marxists. Now, a lot of them protest. I'm not sure if the protest is in good faith. I think they might be gaslighting when they protest in this way. They say, no, I'm not a Marxist. I'm not a socialist. Who is Marx? I don't even know who Marx is. We just want social programs. Well, then you are ignorant. If you want social programs, that's Marxism/socialism. Okay, what else is there about the left? They're educated or have college degrees. They're Marxist or socialist or in favor of social programs. They are also verbally pro-minority. Now, this is a new thing, new in the sense of being the last 20 or 30 or 40 years. This isn't an eternal leftist position in America, but it was a leftist position in Soviet Russia. They did claim to be the non-racist country where American capitalism were racist and everything. And that was in the 1920s and 30s. So this is not a new thing. The left in communist Russia was also in favor of no-fault divorce and free abortions provided by the state. So these are not new positions. These are Soviet Russian positions. The interesting thing about the left is that they loathe the prospect of thinking for themselves. They are authoritarians in the most obvious way. They are always saying, do you have a source for that? Well, can you evaluate the statement? No, you can't evaluate the statement unless I can cite it as having come from the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN. And if it didn't come from a reputable news source, then, so they can't think for themselves. And what are we going to do about Joe Rogan? What are we going to do about people like that? Are you going to start your own Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan's not a leftist. He's not on the, he's not a rightist. He's not on the right. He's just a airheaded, curious guy who started a popular podcast. Maybe he's hot or cute or something, but he's I don't know what exactly started making him popular, but he's willing to have long conversations with a lot of different people. And if you don't like one, tune into the next one because he has so many different conversations. Some of them, he really does not know what he's talking about, or what the other guy's talking about, what his interviewee's talking about. And that's fine. And can the left do that? No, the left can't do that because they can't have things unscripted. They can't have things that might go off the rails. They can't have things where uncouth or untoward things might be said, or improper or impolite things might be said. So they can't have it. They can't have something like Joe Rogan. The left has to have it protected, scripted, and censored, or else feelings might be hurt. And now why are they like that? Well, it's because they're all educated. They are part of a priestly class. Now, the joke's on them and us and society. They're not actually educated. They're ignorant. They're brainwashed. They've been taught a tissue of lies. And to the extent they've been taught anything. And they've spent most of their time just wasting away in the university, spending a huge amount of money, and then getting out of there with no knowledge, a bunch of brainwashing, and high amounts of debt. So they are authoritarians. They are a priestly, educated authoritarian class. You have to go for years to these institutions and jump through all the hoops, and then you get a little gold star on your nose, and then everybody knows that you're one of them. But that doesn't mean that you're knowledgeable or know anything. And they've been doing the same thing with capitalism is racist. We're in favor of the minorities. We're in favor of all humans, all humanity, everybody, the victims, every victim. We're in favor of all victims. They've been doing that for 100 goddamn years. All right? This is not a new line of thought. This is from the 1920s and 30s in Russia, this line of advertising for the Soviet side. Where are they going to go? What is the next step for the left? Well, I will just quote Christopher Hitchens right here. He was talking about the religious milieu, but we can apply the same thing because the left is just another religion. It's religion of Marxism. And Hitchens said, quote, "They are stuck, if you like, with the old arguments," end quote. And he goes on to say a little bit about how they have to use the Bible because it's handed down as the Word of God and so forth. So the religious can't change and evolve and get new. There's really a very, very sturdy limit on what they can do. And that's how Marxism is. It's a religion. It is a cult. And they are stuck with these old arguments. They really can't evolve out of them. They are in favor of the minorities because capitalism is just in favor of profit and will trample the minorities. And so that's their story. They have no place to go. And so they find all the minorities they can list, and the list has gotten quite long down to transgenders, which are a tiny, tiny number of people. And everything in society's got to be bent to the transgender, whatever, everything about transgenders. They have no place else to go. They spin off and they die. And they become irrelevant. That's what they do. And there is a guy on YouTube called the What If Altist, which is the what ifist, but with AL inserted. What if alf AL-ist. And he thinks that the left has nothing that they can do now except violence. And there's a possibility in his view that the FBI and CIA simply go into the White House and say, Trump's not coming in here. We are doing whatever. And then that situation will have to evolve as it does. I doubt that's going to happen. But I don't see any future for the left. And honestly, I saw this as what was going to happen to the left back in about 2016. Originally, I thought the right is attracting everybody who's sensible, Mexicans, women, blacks, immigrants, gays, lesbians, you name it. They were coming to the right back in 2016 and saying they're going to support Trump. And I thought, what does the left have to offer? How do they grow? Who votes for them? What is their future if all the people they profess to be protecting can see through the lies and are going over to the right? And the answer is they will just steal elections. That's what they'll do. And if you look at a map of states that have voter ID requirements, Trump won every single one of them. And if you look at states that don't have voter ID requirements, Kamala won every single one of them. And that's not a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. Not a coincidence. So the essence of the left is uneducation or miseducation. The irony of the situation is that they all have college degrees, but as we know, that is just a certificate of a priestly class. It does not denote anything about knowledge or education or real-world information in your head. It's brainwashed garbage you've got in your head if you've got one of those degrees, and you pay an awful, awful lot to be part of this priestly class with your certificate, and you think you rule society, and maybe you don't now. That's the lesson of this election, is maybe all of that brainwashing and all of you sticking together like a big mob, an authoritarian mob, who says, the science, follow the science, when you're explicitly anti-scientific and pro-authoritarian. Maybe that's not going to work. Now, if it did work, if you were able to keep stealing elections and it did work for a while, you would eventually end up like Soviet Russia in some sort of catastrophic collapse. It just can't work in the long term. So what is the left? The left is those who are uneducated, miseducated, brainwashed, and authoritarian. And where do they go now? I think they spin off and die. They get smaller and become irrelevant. They have to become violent, or they are going to become irrelevant. They have to capture something somehow, somewhere, or they're just going to, poof, disappear into history.